Welcome back, listeners. My next guest holds a PhD in research psychology. She's also a dancer, a yoga teacher whose work bridges stress psychology, rhythm, and the nervous system regulation. Tune into this interesting conversation. Ciao, I'm Anna Harsh, professional dancer, author, and host of the Dance Floor podcast, the podcast that offers you advice, tips, and unique ways to find those life lessons that improve our lives. So grab your dance shoes and join me on the dance floor. Welcome back, listeners. I have a very special guest who is a brilliant lady, Miss Lauren Ministero. Welcome to the dance floor.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.
I know I got a chance to meet you and a few other friends in Buffalo, New York for the festival that we were dancing for, the Italian festival there in Buffalo, New York. And so I want to give a shout out to Sal, who was recently on the podcast, for introducing me to all of his new friends. So I was glad that you guys became my friends. So I told him, I texted him that night and said, thank you for letting me borrow your friends because they're amazing. So welcome to the podcast. Tell us a little bit about your journey. You're a dancer and all kinds of titles. So give us a little how you became who you are today.
Sure. So growing up, I trained as a dancer, mostly in ballet and jazz. And my dance journey, I guess, continued in college where I danced Argentine tango for a while. And now I'm trying to do some interesting Southern Italian dances with you and Sal and others. But at the same time, I trained in psychology. So formally in school at the University at Buffalo, I earned a master's and a doctorate in social and personality psychology. So I'm a doctor of psychology, studying mostly social psychology and stress physiology. So it's been really interesting to combine what I'm interested in terms of dance and somatic practices with what we know about how bodies move and how we deal with and regulate stress in our nervous system.
That's awesome. First of all, congratulations. That's a lot of work. And getting your master's and then doctorate. That is amazing, Lauren. I'm so excited to meet you and chat with you and pick your brain today, literally, perhaps. I don't know. We'll see. But all month long on my podcast, I've been talking to some great guests that have been talking about rhythm and dance as therapy. So today, let's dive deeper, perhaps. We always talk about rhythm and alternating movement that can help restore the nervous system and your sense of timing after stress. Can you give a little more explanation about, like, maybe why predictability, movement, like side to side movement, is feeling so regulated when we do those movements, why it feels so calming and rather than just being still?
Yeah, so first of all, when people become stressed from stress physiology, we know that the stress response is really meant to be time limited. So our main stress system, which we call the HPA axis, it's our main stress response, and it really mobilizes us almost like when we're running from a lion or something like that, or when an animal would be running from a lion. It's supposed to be short and then it's supposed to shut off. But humans anticipate the stress and then they ruminate on what's happening and they just keep going. And as we know, the stress response doesn't always fully shut off. So some researchers talk about this, like how zebras run from lions and they don't get ulcers like humans do, because they actually stand there and shake and they can return to baseline, but humans don't shake and return to baseline. So we need something else like dance or like the predictable alternating movements to give our nervous systems just an external sense of timing and release and rhythm to help us organize activation and recovery again and restore our flexibility of our nervous system, really.
That makes so much sense because when I get ready to go on stage, I do some bounces and I shake my hands. It feels good to just get that little stress moment out. Like you said, it's supposed to be temporary, but most of the time it's not temporary. So as dancers, I know we get really nervous before we go on stage. I still get a little nervous before I perform, even though it's been decades and decades, but I still do some bounces and shake my hands or maybe move from side to side. And now we know why, because it does help regulate us and makes it temporary so we can move on. So is that something that we should think about as dancers, maybe doing some quick bounces or swaying from side to side before we go on stage?
I think so. I love that because it gives you the opportunity to use rhythm as something that works bottom up rather than top down. So it gives your body information directly as you're bouncing or you're moving, and you don't have to come up with or tell a story about why you're nervous or why you're stressed out. It just lets your body kind of do the work for you the way that we're intended to function.
Yeah, the body will let you know, always. The body will let you know. Sometimes the brain can't catch up. I feel like the body lets us know first, and then it travels up to the brain and go, hey, I'm feeling a little odd or nervous or anxious. So I think being able to do those movements quickly backstage, before we go on, besides the breathing techniques and, our mantras that we should say in our head, like, you can do it. You can do it. Okay, well, what about practices like walking and swaying, communal dances like we were talking about, engaging, different systems and a support regulation without forcing us to say, calm down, people telling us, calm down, what can we do there?
I think there's a couple different really interesting pieces. So one that I'm thinking a lot about is the idea that it's a side to side movement, but it could also be an eye movement or a tapping or even a side to side sound. So it's any sort of bilateral stimulation that could be helpful. So really cool because you don't need to be able to dance to do this. You can sit in your chair, you can sway, you can have mobility limitations. Any of that is totally fine. And it would still be regulating. It's really about that side to side bilateral stimulation. And this comes up a lot in modern therapy approaches, like EMDR is one that's commonly seen. So eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing, it's called. That's often used to help people get through stress or trauma. And I think anyone could be using, not exactly EMDR, but it's a similar principle. So the bilateral movement, the tapping, the swaying. Again, you can sit in your chair. I'm swaying. You can't see me because we're on a podcast. But you can sit in your chair. You can sway. You can tap your legs. You can move your head from side to side. You can move your eyes from side to side. Anything like that that's engaging one side of the body and then the other as you're thinking about or experiencing a stressful thing in your body could be really helpful.
I do the swaying side to side with my chair yoga class and they love it. And now, connecting to that. So anything side to side for sure, not only stretching side to side, but swaying from side to side. I'm trying to give them more alternatives to calm down the nervous system. If they're sitting in a doctor's office, waiting on results or any other stressful situation, maybe they're on a phone call, that becomes stressful. I see a lot of people pacing back and forth, and maybe that's why, or they sway or shift their weight from one foot to the other. And when you said eye movements, I thought of several different folk dances or traditional dances in many countries do eyes from right to left or left to right, back and forth often. And I don't know in depth about them, but I'm thinking that maybe that's part of it. That's part of their releasing of something of the body or healing the body in some way. I know I've seen like Indian dances and things like that, like from India, use their eyes, as well as different Philippine dances or Thai dances also do eye movements and connection with different fingers, like finger positions and things like that. So this is all very interesting, Lauren. Like I can't think about dance is just taking on a new form, or movement, I should say, has taken on a new form for me this past year of not only healing, but just thinking about movement, daily movement, perhaps on a different level now, and how maybe the everyday person could, think about dance in that respect as well. That it's more than just on a stage. We're doing more than just, performing. We're storytelling and we're regulating our systems in different ways. Are you ready to take your dance skills to the next level? Do you dream of performing on stage in front of a live audience? Well, now's your opportunity. Allegro Dance Company is always looking for new dancers to join our group. We're seeking talented, passionate, and dedicated individuals who are ready to showcase their skills and make a name for themselves in the dance world. Allegro has been entertaining audiences for over 30 years with dynamic showcases of authentic Italian folk dances, along with jazz, ballet, and yes, even a touch of ballroom. We're known for our high-energy performances and innovative choreography. So what are you waiting for? Join Allegro today and be a part of history. Contact us on our website, allegrodancecompany.net, or stick around and chat with us after this performance. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Dance with Allegro. So let's move on to thinking about cultural dance. I know you mentioned the tarantella, and of course, I've been teaching the tarantella for decades now, but it has a history of being with your community and regulatory practices rather than a performance. It's really not meant for performance. I mean, today we do them so we can share them with audiences on a mass production in a sense, but maybe people should keep thinking about it as a release for stress, something to recover from, a trauma-informed approach, perhaps, and rhythm and that repetition that you were talking about and shared movements. When we learn these traditional dances, we're learning more than just dancing. We're learning how to take care of our bodies and maybe heal ourselves and heal the community. So can you maybe speak to that a little bit, how traditional movements do a lot of repetition movement?
More than the repetition, even with what you described, I'm really interested in the communal aspect. Can I talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So as a social psychologist, a lot of what I think about is, how humans think and feel and behave in the communities that they exist in. And that's one thing that really strikes me about the tarantella, but also your episode on the passeggiata as well. So people moving
Yes.
and walking together as community. And healing in community feels really important. So in social psychology, we talk about how the need to belong and to exist in social groups is really fundamental. So it's not even optional. It's just how we're made to be. It's our baseline, even to the extent where like different social neuroscientists describe social baselines. Like it literally costs us more to experience stress when we're alone. Hills feel steeper, things feel harder, challenges we experience feel like they literally take more energy than if we're holding someone's hand or we're with other people that we care about or who can support us. So I think about that as tarantella isn't just rhythmic, it's really shared. So moving and being with others and witnessing and being witnessed feels like a really important part of this that also maps onto a lot of the psychology and the stress physiology piece.
I couldn't have said it better, Lauren. The moment that one hand touches another, I feel like is magic. As soon as we get into that circle and you get a chance to hold someone else's hand, even if you don't know them, that energy that you can give to another person picks them up. And I always challenge my dancers, like, especially if they're brand new to our circle of community and dance, I would say, I'm going to challenge you. Like, if you don't smile throughout this whole dance, I will give you $1 right now. And no one has taken me up on that $1 because the moment we touch hands, the moment we lock eyes, that energy is shared and everybody has to smile. Everybody's energy just improves instantaneously. And to me, I think that's part of the magic of, traditional dance or folk dance, popolare, whatever you want to call it, community dances, when you can move with another person and be on their rhythm. Like you were saying, just taking a walk with family after dinner, anybody can adopt these. These are not just for us Italians, right? Anybody can adopt, taking a walk together after dinner, after lunch, and being on their rhythm, being on the same footing as them, that really helps you when they say you walk in stride with somebody. You really do. And I think that's part of it. Anything that you're going through in life, if you can share or bear the load, right? If more hands are holding, if more legs can do the work, then I think it's less stressful and you do heal way faster, obviously. I mean, if somebody's in a hospital bed, no one comes to see them, that's challenging. I don't know if they're going to heal as fast as somebody going, gosh, you had a lot of visitors today, or, you got a lot of cards in the mail, or somebody sent you flowers. It's that community aspect that I think are always missing. And I think that's what dance, instantaneously brings to the world, because as dancers, we're not soloists all the time. There's somebody watching us in the audience or clapping for us backstage. We're never alone. So I think that's what is the beauty of dance for sure. I don't know. Gosh, this is so interesting. I think all of these aspects that we can bring to the dance floor, help us heal those stressors that you were talking about at the beginning, like how we can move from side to side or bounce or shake or the eyes. All of those things help us calm our nervous system in so many ways. And I would invite all dancers that are listening to do that with another dancer backstage. Maybe you can hold hands and take a deep breath together before you walk on the stage. Like if I'm dancing with a partner, I always want to give a high five or, a little glance or a little wink or something before I dance with them on stage, because I want them to know that we're connected and that you're not alone. Full stop, right? We're not alone. Lauren, that was really interesting. So what's next for you what will you be studying or digging into next? Would you think about doing more of that work with dancers?
That's a great question. I am still doing a little bit of academic collaboration with different people. So I'm still doing some of that research. It would be really interesting to me. I've done a lot of work related to how physiology maps onto whether or not people choose to help others. So a lot of what we call pro-social behavior. I'd be interested to see if there's something about dancers tending to do more of that potentially. That could be possible due to their like tendency toward these communal behaviors. I also have been really interested in the potential for something like coaching related to somatic healing, combining some of the psychology work that I do with, I didn't mention I also teach yoga
I
as
was
well.
just going to say that I think
Yeah.
that you are on a path of healing in movement because combining that movement with yoga, dance, and your psychology background. Hello, mind, body, and spirit. Let's connect, right? That's all three in one. Lauren, that's brilliant. I think you should. I encourage you and inspire you to do those things because we as dancers know the healing powers, whether we say it all the time or not. I think we always know that movement is where it's at. If we move, the cells are moving with us and rearranging inside and maybe recalculating our nervous system that we all need. And I think sharing that with an audience or one-on-one coaching is helpful because, like you said, we're not alone. We're a community. And I think as a community of dancers, we need to step up and keep helping others, reaching back and helping each other so that we don't feel alone. And when our career maybe on the stage stop, that doesn't mean that we are not a dancer anymore. It just means I'm going to move in a different way, perhaps, maybe move a community or create a movement that, moves others to do something inspiring or help someone else. Lauren, let's talk a little bit about our Italian heritage. Does that influence how you study or move or make decisions? Like, does your heritage give you an influence in any way?
I feel like it does in terms of the dance piece. So I mentioned growing up doing different forms of dance, but it wasn't anything that I felt particularly connected to. I think when we first talked, I mean, in a heritage type way, when we first talked, I mentioned like just having a background in things like ballet. I feel like that's where I came from, and I'm used to everything feeling so structured. And sort of growing up and realizing, okay, you can train and dance as a kid, you can move on, and dance is still for you as an adult, but in these different places. Folk dancing has been a really big deal for me. It's been really interesting to move from the training in something like jazz and ballet to something where it's folk dancing that's shared with people, and it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be choreographed, and it
It
can
doesn't have to be
be
choreographed. And
healing.
it's improvisational,
Yeah.
it's on the spot training, and it has a technique in its own sense that is, for me, it's been challenging to teach in a sense because for, let's say, Italian folk dances from the South, they're over 2,000 years old. So they don't have a vocabulary like a ballet would have. If I said tombe pas de bourrée to you, you're going to know what that means exactly. And all the dancers on the podcast here are going to be like, yeah, I know exactly what that looks like. Right or left, Anna? Which way would you want me to go? But there's not that vocabulary for a tarantella. So I'm putting vocabulary to what I think are steps in a sense, just so we can all be on the same page when we do it for a show, or so that we can pass it on and say, well, this is what I call a crossover step or a stuttering step or a paddle turn. Those are the challenges I think that we have teaching these traditional dances, but it goes back to our point of you've got to do it together. You've got to be in person in a sense. So you can feel the energy, feel the healing powers that they bring and the differences that makes in your life. And so that you can see the steps up close and feel the energy of the step. That's the one thing that when I go to Italy and study, it's not just about, oh, my foot goes here, foot crosses over, my arm goes here. Sometimes it's about what does the energy behind the step bring? And for me, that is hard to teach. And so I'm doing my best to say, well, it feels like an explosion, or it feels like a swirl, or it feels like rocking a baby. So I'm trying to put vocabulary to the energy as well as the steps. But I know your heritage influences you daily. You just don't realize it.
It's so funny, like you asking me that question. I try to answer with the very like cerebral kind of response, right? Like it's really been hard for me to kind of get into the body piece of this, but I think it's been really healing because I'm so used to, like you described, the traditional dance steps and things like that. But what I think I really need is the hard part, the part where I'm actually getting into my body with my community. So it's funny that, you can be an expert on a piece of this, but maybe you're also struggling with it.
Sure. I mean, the first few classes I took in Italy, I was like, I had to let go of my training. They would yell at me and say, "Stop pointing your foot. Why is your arm so beautiful in the air?" You know what I mean? But I think that reminds us that life is messy. Life is not perfect. They're not straight lines. They go up and down and a swirl around. And so your arm doesn't have to be a beautiful port de bras or placed in a certain position, like first or second, like from ballet, let's say. But these are just, it mimics maybe a tree or a flower that's growing or a seed that is planted. These are movements that I've learned. I'm like, oh, that looks like this, or it represents this. So yeah, I had to, in a way, get away from the cerebral, the overthinking of, oh, well, this is how dance should be. Well, no, dance is celebration of life and all that it brings, right? From birth to death. So I think that's what maybe more dancers could embrace is, yes, we have technique, and yes, you took years of dance to perfect something. Trust me, I know. But I think if we see the flip side of dance, the realness of dance, the realness of movement, I think that's where true life lessons live. It's where our stories live and our life lessons live. And that's where I've learned the most, I think, from dance as an art, but dance as storytelling and a cultural aspect.
It's also been so interesting for me personally, being an Italian American and meeting other Italian Americans to do these dances. So certain things come up where we'll be dancing and maybe there's like a shared understanding or a shared cultural piece. Like we grew up eating the same foods, or we grew up using the same Italian words in our houses, or maybe there's even a shared symbol or like archetypal thing that comes up when we're dancing, or we say, huh, I feel strangely like we've done this before, or like our bodies have been in these shapes. So it's
Yeah.
moving from science into this kind of more intuitive piece. That's been really interesting for me.
Yeah, and I think that's why dancers feel like family all of a sudden, like instantaneously. Like, oh, you've experienced that too. Yeah, me too. And that's where you feel like family doesn't have to always be biological, but a community kind of feel. And so that's what it should be. When I was little, my neighbors felt like family because I was playing in the backyard or dancing in the backyard. They would come down and watch. What are you practicing? What are you doing? Where are you going to be dancing? And they couldn't wait to be in the audience to watch. So I think it's that community, that aspect that I always come back to, and even inside of the word of community is unity, you and I. So I think that's where I always go back to it and remind myself every time I do perform, like, well, who else can I pull up here with me? Who else can join my circle? So I think that's part of it, Lauren. This was fantastic. I appreciate you and all of your work and all of the energy that you're bringing into the world. I think we all need it for sure. So, where can we follow your journey if you want to share?
I can give you my website, which is laurenministero.com with my big Italian last name. I'm
Love it.
also on Instagram at Lauren Mini, so LaurenMini.
We can follow you on Instagram or go to your website and keep in touch with you and maybe pick your brain again about, your thoughts on healing and nervous system and how we as dancers can do more, be more, and share more with others. I think that's amazing. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe and hit the 5-star button to make us shine. If you want more information on me, visit my Substack at Tambourine Chronicles or my website, annaharsh.com. All right, I'm your host. And until next time, keep swaying and finding your own rhythm onto the dance floor.